the side aisle. Families in the front. You can please use the side aisle. Families in the front. Please use the side aisle. Families in the front row.
So you're back.
What's cool is you get to see places. This was when we had a wild. This was in the kitchen. It's on Yes, I did. We liked it a lot. In a way, it was good.
You can please use your side aisle. Families in the front row. You can please use your side aisle. Families in the front row.
Have a seat. Just have a seat, please. And I'll just have a seat, please. Thank you. Yeah, just any place on the left. Thank you.
Folks, we can begin your next seats now. We're going to begin services.
Guys, if you can join us for services, have a seat. Thank you.
Next seats, folks, please. We're going to begin services. Thank you.
Just have a seat, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. On behalf of the Yellen family, I know how much it means to them that you would come here today as we remember the life of Scott Yellen. I'm fond of saying at the beginning of funerals, because I think it's true, that the people we've loved and the people we've lost, they live on, right here. All Scott's joys, all his troubles, all his stories, all his everythings live on inside of us. We honor his memory by making him a part of us, because we will take him everywhere we go. That's how we remember him. That's how we honor him. Shaviti Adonai lenegeti tamid hi mimine bal amot. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side. I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithfulness one see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings joy, enduring happiness, as is always a gift. And let us all say, Amen. We will begin our service today with the reciting of Psalm 23. I invite you to say the words with me in English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And let us all say once again, Amen. These words come from Kohelet, but I think they are always resonant in moments like these. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Harris Scott Yellen was born in 1962 to Lou and Annette Yellen. Now, to understand where Scott comes from, we have to know a little bit about his backstory. Annette met Lou as high school sweethearts. They were young. They got married at 18 and 19 years old. Graciously, Lou's parents invited them to live with them because they were too young to get their own place. They owned a grocery store, and they would both work in that grocery store, building a work ethic that I think would serve them throughout their lives. About 13 months after they got married, they had Scott. Eventually, Lou would go into the printing business, and they would move to South Jersey. They had 3 children. Scott was the oldest. Joan was the middle child, born in 1964, and then was Cheryl, who came in 1965. They were a very family-oriented family. They would go on family vacations together. They were very close with their grandparents. They said, hey, if you gotta fight, you fight to each other's face, but you don't lie behind people's back. Could be combustible at times, but that's how they chose it. But the business was everything. Family business was very pervasive in their family. Scott was a bright but rebellious child. In the 4th grade, when Scott was walking up the steps behind his teacher, he grabbed her butt. Okay. Annette didn't believe it. She swore that her baby wouldn't do that. It wasn't only until she talked to the teacher that she knew it was true. Lou just said, "That's my boy." He marched to his own drummer. That was for sure. Scott had a lot of neighborhood friends. He loved playing sports, hockey and football. He loved target shooting. He loved gangster movies and gangster history. Scott had a lot of hobbies. He loved many different things. But Scott, he did his own thing. He went his own ways. And when he went to college, I asked Annette, I said, "What did he study?" He went to Syracuse. She said, "He studied girls." I said, "What else did he study?" She said, "More girls." He didn't last long in college. College wasn't for Scott. He lasted about a semester before he came home. So he tried his hand at the family business. He emulated his father. His father was everything to him. It was a shadow that would cast over his life. A large shadow. But he wanted to go into the family business because he wanted to be like Dad. He wanted to be like Mom. But he wasn't great at the beginning. He was a little entitled, a little egotistical, and they made him start at the bottom. He had to prove himself. And Annette told me they put him working on the press. I have no idea what that means, but he did it. Not well. But he learned. He didn't do it well, but he learned. And he worked his way up in that family business.
She just said he broke the press.
He broke the press. Well, you got to learn somehow. I think he loved working with his father and his mother. Those were big shoes to fill. I don't know if he ever felt him fill them, but he sure tried. He tried. Scott had his fair share of challenges. When Dad passed, it hit him really hard. He loved his father more than life itself. His father was an amazing man. Temple Sinai community, he was larger than life. He did so much. And I think Scott always yearned just to fill even a little space of that. A few years later, he got divorced, which I knew was heartbreaking to him. And this rocked his world, as it would rock any one of our worlds. But his better qualities always shine through. Because I asked each one of the family members here today, what were Scott's better qualities? Cheryl said, funny. He had a great sense of humor. Funny as a whip, very sharp. Could have been a lawyer if he could only go through school. He was that sharp. He was that funny. Joan told me he loved helping people. In quiet moments, he would buy veterans meals. He would donate to the local police department. He loved just being charitable, but not with anybody having to know about it, not making a big fuss. They said he gave more than he always had to give. He gave more of himself to people than would sometimes be given back to him. And that's hard. That's hard for anybody. But it tells you what type of man he was deep, deep down. They said Scott could be coarse. His humor could be dark and a little bit of offensive. To put it mildly. But deep inside, he was a softie. He was a teddy bear. Just wanted to be loved, as do we all. He was a kind person. He was a kind person. But I didn't know Scott nearly as well as all of you. So I want to take a moment to bring Cheryl up. Cheryl's going to share a few words for us about her brother Scott.
Hi. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm his sister. For those of you who do, you know that we have a pretty epic relationship. One of the reasons that Mom has me up here instead of her, even Joan, she said, this way, you'll finally get the last word. So, we'll give it a shot. As Rabbi just said, you know, when my dad died, it flipped Scott upside down, inside out, and back again. So we're going to start there. Because shortly after my dad died, I made it a point to tell him exactly what I thought of him. And what that is what I think the rabbi just said, it's my words. He was whip smart, but for somebody who is so bright, he can be incredibly stupid. Meaning, there was no need for him to emulate or try to even come close to what his father was. This is about him, it's not about my dad. And I told Scott, we know that it's hard enough to be Lou's kid. Nobody said that he had to be Lou Rev 2 or 2.0. Nobody. I don't know where he got the thought, but he didn't. Lou is Lou, Scott is Scott. And the point was, just being Scott would be not only good enough, it's better than most. And I'm not sure he believed me at first until I sat there in a room with him and actually screamed it at him. You're more than good enough. You're better than good enough. So, just being him, again, it was pretty terrific. It was pretty fun once you remembered what that was. Looking at some of our cousins here, and y'all have your own stories. I was limited on what I was allowed to say, but it's good enough to say, and those who didn't know how he was raised and how he grew up, that mischief making was one of his primary, pastimes, one of his favorite pastimes. It always came with implausible deniability, because that is who he was. And as much as he enjoyed making the mischief happen, I enjoyed watching it. I'm pretty sure Joan enjoyed watching it. And we all just sat there saying, is he actually getting away with that? Is she buying that story? I guess kind of like the 4th grade Pinchy thing. But yeah, he did. I mean, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm doing it. The one example I'm going to share, because it's just too Scott not to. Mom and Dad were away, I don't know if it was a long weekend or a week or whatever it was, and my grandparents were watching us. And good old Scott was up in his room doing whatever it was he was doing, and I guess he got bored because he decided to take some impromptu target practice with his BB gun while our neighbor was across the street gardening. And he had a wonderful target facing his bedroom window. And it wasn't a rose bush. The better example, which I think has a different side of him, which not many people know, and this just goes to prove something I said for the past 30 years, because I'm only 32. Joan was his favorite, and I knew that from the time I was a little kid. The reason I knew that is because Joan always wanted a bunny rabbit, right? And Scott got her first bunny rabbit, and she was in elementary school. And I told my mom this morning that I think he did know at the time the rabbit was pregnant. Because Joan wanted a bunch of rabbits, and there is no way that when Rudy gave him that rabbit to give to his baby sister, that's what he called her, that he didn't know this rabbit was pregnant. But good old Mom and Dad, they took it in stride, and they're like, well, Joan, you're now the proud owner of, how many were there? I don't know. But they're just told Scott that he got to build all the rabbit hutches that she would need and make sure that she understood how to care for them. That was on him. And he's like, okay, cool. He did. As for me, he didn't leave me aside by any stretch. I told my mom this last night, and my cousins will appreciate this greatly. She did bring out her wooden spoon after I told her the story. When I was in middle school, and a little bit in high school, my brother would sign some of the paperwork that came home from school. Some of the admiration notes that the teachers would send home. Hey, can you get your parents to sign this? Whatever it was. He would sign it for me, Mr. Yellen. And it was not a lie. He didn't forge anything. He was Mr. Yellen. Right? He was bar mitzvahed at that point. He was Mr. Yellen. So yeah, Mom, he had my back too. So, as the rabbi said, though, we can't talk about Scott without comparing him to my dad. And they were really different, though. As much as Scott tried really hard to be that legend, he couldn't. And they were really different. The best example of how different they were, one of the years that they went hunting together, which was all the time until my dad couldn't go anymore, they came back. My dad had this grand idea to put the deer that they were bringing home on the roof rack, and it was the beginning of December, and he painted the deer's nose red. And my father drove through the neighborhood telling everybody that he killed Rudolph and he was sorry. Now, in contrast, Scott, on the other hand, embraced who he was. And he didn't need to do that, because by embracing who he was, he went the total opposite direction. And he, I don't even know for how many years, would dress up as Santa and spend multiple iterations doing the whole Santa thing for kids in different neighborhoods where they otherwise may not meet Santa. So, on the one hand, my dad is making these kids cry, and the adults were snickering. He, on the other hand, was delighting all these little kids and making them happy. Yes, Joanne, I think your father was in on that too. Anyway, but even more importantly than him going out of his way to make sure that he made all these kids happy, because it brought him joy. One of the things that my mom learned, one of the things that she learned, and she had to get her head around as we were talking the past couple of days, is that Scott was an organ donor. And because of him, as Joan said earlier today, somebody else can now see, somebody else can now walk, somebody else has bone graft material, and who knows how many burn victims are going to get that skin. So in one of his last acts even, he got out of his own damn way, and he was there doing what he loved best, which is for others. Because that's who both of my parents, not just my dad, but her too, wanted him and expected him to be. And when he and I got done yelling at each other that day, he realized that's who he was, and that's when he's happiest. So at the end of the day, we all evolved, and he found his own path. And the rabbi said he had his own vision for his life, and once he got into his dreams, he realized that his dreams really were quite large for what he wanted. And he did work his tail off. And he got to a place finally where his future looked like it was going to be solid, his professional future. His personal future, he was finally also in a place where he was surrounded by people who loved him for who he was, not for who they wanted him to be, but for who he was in here. And that's where it really matters. He finally had the niece and nephew that, I'd like to tell you that I monitored what they talked about because I didn't trust them, but I finally said, to hell with it, I can't. He'll figure out how to get around it. But he has, you, Danielle, have the pleasure of being the only woman, the only female who's ever clocked him. And could not only gotten away with it, he was bragging about it. The back end of that story is she hit him over the head when they were goofing around with a pool noodle. And he liked to run around telling people, yeah, my niece got me really good on the head, you should see the scar. So you're the only person who ever got away with that. And you, my darling son, Matt, I don't know what sports you guys are always talking about. I don't need to know. I know that you guys talk about stuff that was way beyond me, and I'm just happy that you and he had that time. I know that that you both wanted to go hunting with him and enjoy Helmsdale. I'll figure out how to make that happen. I can't go, because I don't know where it is, honestly. He has the GPS, and he's taking it with him, but I'll figure it out for you both, because that was important to him that we get there. So, again, I mean, as the rabbi said, once he remembered, he did not need to chase that shadow. He was so much happier, and everything in his life fell into place. And I'm telling you this because it's important that you know what he cherished most, aside from his Rolling Stones. And arguably his Camaro. Joan and I are still debating whether that was as important to him toward the end as it was when he was a teen. But what was most important to him was his family. And well, I'm grateful that we all figured it out and took time to celebrate each other. I'm most happy that he figured out the authentic true love that he could give and he could show was all that people wanted from him, and he gave it to us. So, we'll miss him. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's beautiful. Truly. Take a moment of silence. Bring Scott into your heart and into your mind. May his memory always be a blessing to those who know him, and let us all say, Amen. Kohelet wrote, "The eye never has its fill of seeing. Young or old, those who depart this life never see enough of this world, never complete their task, never cherish their loved ones enough before they are called home. How they yearn for yet another respite from that final summons, and how we yearn to have them close to us for yet another moment of challenge, of joy, and of those precious moments we share together. God, be now with those whose hearts are broken, because whenever parting comes, it comes too soon. Console them at this hour. Be near to them when the light seems distant. Sustain them, O God, until the time of healing." And let us all say, Amen. May the memory of Harris Scott Yellen endure among us as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that in your light we shall see light. In life and in death we cannot go where you are not, and where you are, hope endures. Sustained by this assurance, we invoke your name, Almighty God. There are two well-known prayers that we say at funerals. One is El Moli Rachamim, which we are asking for God's compassion in these moments. And the others is the Mourner's Kaddish, which we will say when we reach the graveside. But we say these words asking for that final compassion on Scott's life, on Scott's soul, as he makes that journey to the great unknown. El Moli Rachamim, Sholchein Bamromim, Hamse Menucha, Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashkina, Im Kedoshim, Otohorim, Hakaria, Mazirim, Et Nishmat, Chaim Ben Lezer Vechana, Shehalach Lamo, Va'al Harachamim, Yeseteru, Veseteter Knafav Lamim, Vayitror, Bitror, Achaim et Ishmato, Adonai hu Nachamato, Venuach v'shalom al Mishkavo v'nomar, and let us all say, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Scott, Chaim, Ben Lazer, V'chana, who's entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in eternal life. God is his inheritance now. May he rest in peace. And let us say once more, Amen. Our service will continue at Crescent Cemetery, where we will come together one last time to honor Scott and his memory.
Will the pallbearers please step to the center aisle? And I'll ask if we can rise once more, please. May you be seated, please. I'll ask if you kindly remain seated, please, just for a moment.
Take hold of the handles, all up together.
Folks in these two rows, if you can go to our cars, please. Folks in this row, please. Folks in these seats.